Hi, I'm Stephen Maher, the Executive Editor of iPolitics, and I'm here with Quito Maggi, the CEO of Mainstreet Research. How are you doing, Quito?
I'm well, Stephen. How are you?
Great. We're here to talk about the iPolitics CPC Leadership Tracker, powered by Mainstreet. I feel like we should have some theme music for that.
Yeah, there should be some dun dun dun.
Dum dum dum. We've been tracking the Conservative leadership campaign for months now, so that we can try to get a handle on who's going to win it, who the contenders are. We think that it'll be useful for Conservative Party members when they're trying to decide who to support. Quito, how did this start?
So we started back in January. We started polling. We were matching Conservative Party donors lists to telephone directories and calling them and screening them for membership, asking them, in fact, are you a member? If not, are you planning on joining? And so that's how it started.
And the good thing about this, compared with other polls from other inferior pollsters, is that we are reaching Conservative Party members, the people who are actually going to decide.
You know, this started because we know, like other pollsters, we've done polls of the general electorate on these leaderships, what people's impressions are, but it really doesn't give us any, it's a useless number. Even when we look at polling Conservative supporters and saying how they, feel about a particular leadership candidate, it just doesn't give us a useful number at all.
That's right. And that's because someone like, say, Kelly Leach, for example, has very high negatives with the general public, but she's more popular among conservatives.
Yeah, correct. She's been, consistently third in our polling. She's dipped a little bit lately. We expect to see that number in the coming month when new signups get thrown into the mix. We expect to see that number change and increase again. But yes, her ideological campaign does have appeal to an ideological base within the Conservative Party members.
So you mentioned the list. There are now about 138,000 members signed up. And you started out polling from publicly available data sets from Elections Canada, former Conservative Party donors. But then something changed 2 weeks ago. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we had been talking about, getting the list, and a number of people had suggested polling the list. And I guess our concern was that if we just got one list, how could we rely on it being accurate? So
the campaigns, I want to point out that the Central Party distributes the membership list to everybody in the campaign, to all the 14 Conservative candidates.
Correct. Yeah, all the candidates get the same list. Everyone who has signed up through the Conservative Party website or who the campaigns have submitted prior to March 28th is on the list that we have. It's a March 30th membership list, 137,549 Conservative Party members.
And for the past 2 weeks, you've been polling that list.
That's right. So what we did is we changed from polling the donors list and getting about a 70% hit rate. And we're still not assuming these people are members, even though we know we're on the list, because we don't know that we're hitting someone in the household who is not a member. So we're still asking that question, screening it out. But it's about 95% of the people that of the phone numbers from that list are telling us, yes, they're members. And then we're asking them how they're going to vote.
I should point out, we're going to go through the numbers, and I should point out that these numbers are available to subscribers to the CPC Data Tracker poll, which you can find on the iPolitics website. But we're giving everyone a little sneak peek. So here's the first slide, Quito. This is first ballot preference as percentage of vote. Now, Why do you point that out, that it's a percentage of the vote?
This is a raw vote count, essentially. As a percentage of vote, Kevin O'Leary is leading. He has consistently led. He was as high as 27%. He's been number one. Maxime Bernier number two now for a very, very long time. And at least the last 2 months, we had Kelly Leitch in third for a very long time in terms of votes as well. Andrew Scheer and a couple of others have crept up there and given her some competition. Now she's, third, fourth. But there is some interesting changes that happen when you then express that in points.
Okay, so the next chart shows first ballot preference as percentage of points. I think we should point out here that this is not a one-member, one-vote election. There are 338 federal ridings in Canada. Each riding has been given 100 points. Some of those ridings have thousands of members. Medicine Hat, I think, has 5,000 plus. Some have only double digits.
Yeah.
And each riding has the same weight. So that's why it's necessary for you to weight them. And that's why these numbers are a little bit different from the previous numbers.
Yeah, correct. And I guess the importance of that is it's not one race. It's 338 races. Like you said, at the top end, you have Medicine Hat, the Calgary ridings that have thousands of members. On the bottom end, we know that all 79 Quebec ridings are in the bottom 100. The bottom riding in Quebec has 18 members. The value of those votes is a minimum of 5 points compared to the value of a vote in Calgary, which is going to be 0.05 points. So that's why it's important to translate this. And when we see candidates that have either clusters of support, geographic strengths in a particular area, it may not necessarily then translate to points in the same way. We see that effect with Maxime Bernier, with Kelly Leitch, with Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer is a little bit higher in votes at 16 this week. He's down to 14 in points, mostly because most of his strength is in largely based in Western Canada.
It's what we would call an inefficient vote.
Yes, correct.
So one other thing we should point out, this is we're looking here at quite a large sample size, 7,326. That's because this is a rolling poll, right? That you have got a formula where you roll in results from several weeks'
correct
samples.
Yeah.
The next slide is first ballot preference as a percentage of vote. Smaller sample, 2,135, still big enough for our purposes. But this is just April 18th to 22nd, and we see something kind of different here, don't we?
Yeah, here for the first time in more than 2 months, we have a different person in second place as a percentage of vote. The last time we had someone other than Maxime Bernier come in second was Kelly Leitch almost 2 months ago. So this week, we see Andrew Scheer jumping up into second place. He's up about 3 points from last week. He was at 13. Now he's at 16 and change. And Maxime Bernier, who was about 17% in votes last week, we see drop 3 points. Then he's down to 14 in the third place. Kevin O'Leary's back up over 25% this week for the first time in 3 or 4 weeks. The good sign, it's good news, bad news for Kevin O'Leary, for all three candidates. When you look at what happens down ballot, the fact that he's getting more first choice actually doesn't translate to greater growth on second and third choices.
So over time, we want to look at the time series of first ballot preference here. So this is from the beginning of the polling project in February to April. And it kind of provides a snapshot here of what's been happening. And I should point out that this does not include, this is of the rolling poll, so it doesn't show that snapshot.
Correct.
But over time here, we see O'Leary's always been ahead, but then he kind of dipped. Bernier almost caught him, and now he's dipped, and we see Scheer moving up.
Yeah, Scheer definitely is. We see having an upward trend on his over time. He had been what we all believed was underperforming for the number of endorsements and that he had from caucus members. Some of the other candidates, Aaron O'Toole, especially similar boat, had been underperforming in our polling, and now those numbers are finally probably getting to expected levels. We see O'Toole as well has more than doubled, actually close to tripled now over this time series. Still not breaking into double digits, but he may be running out of runway. But Andrew Scheer is probably still has a shot.
This next slide's an interesting one. Least likely to support by percentage of votes. O'Leary has been leading this, but he hasn't always led it, has he?
No, from the beginning, back in January when we started the polling, the early leader on this was, we thought it was an interesting question to see kind of, this sort of identifies what the total voter universe might look like for that particular candidate. These are the people who are going to keep this candidate off the ballot entirely. Kelly Leitch led that for the first 6 weeks. Pretty overwhelmingly, almost 20% consistently for that first month and a half. And then Kevin O'Leary, as his polarizing sort of campaign, his both his style and some of the policy positions that he's taken have caused that polarization. He's always led on the positives, but then he started leading on the negatives, and almost 30%, fully 1/4 of the Conservative base is not in any way accessible to him on first, second, or third choice or beyond.
And this tells us that he may not win. He's been ahead in the polls throughout, but because it's a preferential ballot where when candidates drop off, their second and third and fourth ballot choices of their supporters are redistributed. And the data shows that a lot of people do not want, a lot of Conservative Party members who are not supporting O'Leary don't want him to win. They will shift their votes. In traditional delegated conventions, you'd call it an anybody but O'Leary candidate. There will emerge, we think it's Maxime Bernier, maybe it's going to be Andrew Scheer. It's an outside chance it could be Kelly Leitch or Aaron O'Toole. But this next slide here, does it show that? Does it show O'Leary's challenge here?
It does show O'Leary's challenge in that, well, a couple of things that it shows. The undecided vote on, it's very, very low now on first choice, below 5% or around 5%. On second choice, it's now down under 15%. Not that long ago, maybe a month ago, that number was over 30%. And on third choice, it was well over 50% a month ago. Now it's down to under 26, 25.7. It means this race is really, really firming up. What we see is consistently Maxime Bernier has led Kevin O'Leary on second choice and on third choice consistently now for the last couple of months. Not by a lot, by a couple of points, 1 point in some cases. What that means, though, is that, he grows on subsequent ballots more so than Kevin O'Leary. Then when we translate that to points,
that's the next slide.
Yeah. On the next screen, we show with that undecided taken out, right now as it stands, Maxime Bernier continues to lead on second choice, 14%. That's ahead of Scheer, who's now in second on second choice at 13.5, and O'Toole and O'Leary are neck and neck at 12.5. As you can see, it's not a big difference. It's not a big lead, but it's a lead nonetheless. And the fact that Kevin O'Leary is still a couple points back there, he does a little bit better on third choice. We do see now for the last couple of weeks, for the first time ever, Kevin O'Leary and Maxime Bernier are actually not in the top 1-2 on the third choice. We're actually seeing continued strength from Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole, Lisa Raitt on that third choice. If that pattern continues, these numbers could shift in the weeks ahead.
Now, the next slide is the projected result of redistribution of ballots based on points. So it's a challenging sort of thing to visualize, and I think this graphic does the best job of showing how the race will actually work, where candidates drop off as the day goes on May 27th, and then their second and third, fourth, fifth, sixth ballot choices get redistributed. And this shows, if nothing changes, a really, really close race between Bernier and O'Leary, doesn't it?
Correct, yeah. And so this, as you said, it's a great visualization of the way this count's going to work. So the way, even though we know only 10 candidates can be marked on the ballot, there will still be 13 counts, or I guess there will be as many counts as it takes for a candidate to achieve 50% plus one.
And right now, it looks like that's going to be 13 or 14 counts.
It has never not gone the full 13 counts, that means somebody wins on that final ballot. Nobody exceeds 50% until the very last count when there are two candidates on the ballot.
So
and the win right now, sorry if I can just jump in there, as you said, is extremely narrow. It's less than 1%. Bernier passes O'Leary on the 11th or 12th count and wins by less than 1% on the final count.
This is the time series of percentage chance of final rank banked on simulations. So you have computers. You're not doing it with an abacus.
No, that's right.
You're running thousands and thousands of simulations trying to figure out how this is going to play out with the ballots dropping off. And this chart here shows that week to week you have Bernier and O'Leary kind of in a duel. And at this time, it's really hard to know who's going to end up being the leader.
Yeah, and so exactly, we have the known universe, all the data that we've been able to collect over time, and then we have the unknown universe, which is what are these new members that are going to be coming in, and how will they affect these results. And so the computer runs 1,000 simulations, 1,000 different scenarios of how much of that unknown universe different candidates are going to get, and then it projects who's going to finish in first. Overall, over the series of time since we've been polling, only Maxime Bernier and Kevin O'Leary ever have even a 1% chance of coming in first. It used to be Kevin O'Leary had a pretty substantial lead, 60-40, and the lead has kind of changed hands, and now the last couple of weeks it's been tightening up again, almost 50-50. When we run 1,000 simulations, almost 50-50 at this point. So it's going to be a really, really close race.
The last slide we're going to look at is the regional breakdown, and I think this is interesting because remember, each riding has 100 points. It's a big country, and the candidates are getting their support in different places. Here's the national figure. We see O'Leary ahead significantly over Bernier and Scheer, but that looks a little different in different provinces. Saskatchewan, for example, and this is a bit of a problem for Scheer in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, although his lead in Saskatchewan has increased, again, that cluster of support, it's the only province where he's leading. It's one of the only it's one of only two provinces where Kevin O'Leary is not number one. But there's not a lot of points in Saskatchewan. The fact that he's got a 16-point lead over Kevin O'Leary in Saskatchewan doesn't really translate into a heck of a lot of points.
O'Leary is doing very well in Ontario, which, if you want to be doing very well in one province, that's the one where you want to be doing well.
Yeah, it's 122 ridings. That's 12,200 points. You want to be doing well in Ontario, and look, sure enough, Kevin O'Leary, Maxime Bernier, and Andrew Scheer for a long time. Kelly Leach was in third place here in Ontario, and she's been overtaken now by Andrew Scheer.
Second most populous province, different story.
Yeah, this is the big difference maker, and we've talked about this since the very beginning, which is Kevin O'Leary is leading in every province except for Saskatchewan, where he was at times close with Andrew Scheer, but really nowhere in Quebec, and needed to pick up this number a little bit. He has increased. He's in the top three. He's at 12% in Quebec, but look at the lead. It's a 30-point or 25-point lead over second place Steve Blaney, who's also from Quebec. Kevin O'Leary's third, solid 12%. He started at 5.
Oh là 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 là, c'est pas bon.
Non, c'est pas bon ça. So, I guess this is where Kevin O'Leary could lose it. And this is where the big difference is in points. That 25-point lead translates into many, many thousands of points. In Quebec, it's worth 7,900 points. Although Kevin O'Leary, I should point out for subscribers, you can go and check the map and actually look at the subregions. And what you'll see there is that Kevin O'Leary does a little bit better in the urban centers in Quebec City and Montreal, which have a lot of ridings. So that might actually translate into a few more points. But this is where Maxime Bernier's catching Kevin O'Leary consistently because of those points coming out of Quebec.
It's a month to go. May 27th, Toronto Convention Center in Etobicoke.
Yep.
We're going to be there. It's going to be exciting. And up until the end, we're going to be polling Conservative Party members every day and posting the results on iPolitics. What are you watching for with the next data set?
Well, we're looking forward to getting that next data set, because what we don't know is who put in most of their memberships in through the Conservative Party website to be on this list of 137,000, and who held back and put it in at the deadline later. So once we get that final list, whatever it is, 185,000, 210,000, could give or take, those are best guesses on what it's going to be. Once we start pulling those numbers, starting I guess 2 weeks from now, to see how that changes these numbers. What I will say is that although there's been some marginal changes since we've gotten the membership list, it hasn't been that dramatic. The most dramatic difference has been on the demographics. We're seeing less skewed male and less skewed older Conservative Party members. We on the donors list, there was only, as you can probably imagine, less than 10%, 18 to 34. On the actual membership list, that's closer to 15%, which is closer to what the general population is.
But it's kind of a big question mark. If you talk to people with experience in running leadership campaigns, they point out that some of both Bernier and O'Leary have had success at signing up young members at university campuses, but whether those new members who've paid $15 in order to join the party will actually get around to filling out their ballot and mailing it in and have their votes counted. That's a hard thing to figure out, isn't it?
It is, and that's where turnout's going to matter. Organization. These campaigns have a big job ahead of them. They're already probably planning for this. To your point about university students, where they signed up actually will matter very importantly on whether they vote. They signed up in January when Kevin O'Leary came to visit their school. Did they use their school address or their parents' address back at home? School ends in April. By the time the vote happens, it's in May. If their ballot gets mailed to their school address, they may not get that ballot. Or vice versa. It really depends on where they signed up. So some of those factors are going to play into it. Some of the community groups that have signed up, ethnic organizers that will be pulling some
anti-abortion activists,
and there are some of those interest groups out there. We know that there's the subgroup of Campaign Life Coalition that is supporting a couple of the candidates. We know that there are special interest groups trying to drive the vote for more progressive candidates. We know they signed up a significant number of members. All of those factors, just lots of moving parts. I think we're going to be pretty close, and it just should be really interesting and fascinating to see how it all shakes out.
It's going to be really fun. This has been fun. Thank you for coming into our brand new iPolitics podcast studio,
Yeah,
Quito.
I look forward to it. This is the inaugural podcast dry run test, I suppose, and thanks for letting me be part of that.
Thank you. Bum, 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 bum.